Buongiorno e benvenuti. Welcome to Art Yoga Pills with me, your host, Dinny. In this space, we will connect and share together about creativity, inner child, and self-awareness. Siete pronti? Enjoy! Ciao a tutti, Kia ora, and welcome to a new episode of Art Yoga Pills. Today with me, I have a special guest, Tina Mairi. How are you, Tina?
I'm really well, thanks, Deanie.
I'm so glad to have you in the space with me. I always come to see gigs of yours and not truly having proper conversation where the surrounding is quiet. So hopefully it will be our case tonight to explore one another. And to begin with our sharing, I would like to offer you my first question, which is, who is Tina? If you would like to share with us today.
Yeah, I love how you go straight in with a really big question that is almost impossible to answer. It's a really good one. And I think there would have been a time when I would have sort of talked about some of the things that I do to answer that question. But over time, I've come to realize that that's actually not who I am. Um, and who I am is a constantly changing thing as well. But if I think about, some of the attributes that are kind of consistent over time, I would say that, Tina is fundamentally quite a loving person. She likes to have a laugh. Um, she thinks probably a bit too much, which can make her a bit highly strung and, run a little bit anxious. Um, yeah, those are probably the main things that come to mind.
And that's a really beautiful way of describing oneself. It's not always happening that someone goes a little bit deeper than the label that we decide to attach to our name. And I really enjoy to get to know you through your feelings. So it's a beautiful way of describing who is Tina today as well. So really being in the present moment.
Yeah, because there's so many different moving parts to a person that I think it's important uh to give their room for things to change, right? And yeah, I think it was an experience that I had, oh gosh, it was probably about 10 or 15 years ago when I stepped out of full-time work to see if I could make part-time work and, doing something different work for me. And I really noticed that was, that how much we identify with what we do. And especially, it can be with what we do for work as well. So it was an interesting process to go through to have that kind of identity of doing a particular job and working for a particular company and, being in regular full-time employment, having that taken away. And it's like, well, if you have that taken away, who are you? So yeah, it was an interesting thing to go through, and I think that's fundamentally changed the way that I would answer that question today.
Absolutely. And actually, I resonate with what you are sharing about the career path. It was the same for me just before start traveling after 7 years in the office job and identify myself with the title of graphic designer and then
Mm.
losing my identity because I didn't wanted to pursue that career anymore as a full-time job. So absolutely I resonate with new ways that we can define ourselves every day, not necessarily through what we do, but what we perceive ourselves to be or are today. So yeah, thank you for that. Mm. One curiosity that I have about you and part of what you like to do, one that I would consider your passion is music and DJing. So I was
Mm.
really curious to understand how that journey began for you, if was something that you discovered since you were little or it came through time, and navigate a little bit that if you like.
Yeah, yeah, it was really interesting how that came about, actually. I wasn't particularly, musical growing up, I didn't play any instruments or anything like that. And I discovered electronic music a little bit by chance through a colleague of mine who was a DJ in the underground scene in Auckland. And, he would post some mixes that his friends had done. And it was the first time for me hearing house music. At the time, I was going out to these terrible waterfront nightclubs and, listening to top 40 music, very mainstream kind of stuff. So it was my first time hearing this style of music, and I just really loved it and really started, going out to all of those events. And through that, I got to know a lot of those local DJs. And somewhere along the way, I became just really interested in wanting to give it a go for myself. So unfortunately, there had been all of these things that had happened in the lead up to that kind of made it possible to take the steps to be able to do it. One of them, which doesn't seem related at all, but was really key, was that one of the jobs I'd done in the past was working for Les Mills International, who franchise their fitness classes and set their classes to music. And I particularly loved their yoga-based class, Body Balance, and ended up training to become an instructor, which for me was a real stretch at the time. I was not someone that really wanted to put myself in front of people necessarily, but I loved the class so much. I loved the music and, the way that the class was all mapped out to that. And so I was lucky that I got some encouragement from the training manager to give it a go, and I did. And what that made me have to do was really get over my fear of, being up in front of a room full of people and having the potential for things to go wrong and to be embarrassed in front of a room full of people. So that was a fairly big process to work through. But in retrospect, I'm not sure that I would have had the courage to to actually get up in front of a room full of people and play music if I hadn't already gone through that process. So it was helpful that side of things, I kind of understood, what was required and how to approach that, and could just focus on, the actual techniques behind DJing. So there was that. But also for a long time, I was just really interested in, the creative process and reading about all sorts of different artists' takes on the creative process. And at the time, I didn't really feel like I had a creative outlet that I could apply it to. But for some reason, I was just really interested to read about it. And I came across a woman by the name of Emma Rogan, who was talking about this thing called the 100-day project, which is a creative exercise, which can be applied to pretty much anything. All you need to do is choose a creative action of some description, set some constraints for yourself, and then commit to doing that same creative action 100 days in a row. And I was so inspired when I heard her talk about it, and would have loved to have done it, but there was nothing obvious at the time when I heard her speak that I could apply it to. But then it was a few years later, and then this interest in DJing popped up. I thought, oh, hang on, this might be a really good kind of structure to put around the learning process, because, when you are learning a new skill, it's often, you have to push through that uncomfortable time of not being good at something. So I kind of knew that some structure would help me with that. So when I got started with mixing, I set it up as a 100-day project to mix 2 songs every day for 100 days. And yeah, that worked really well for me. Didn't really know anything on day one. Had some people, show me some of the basics, and just turned up each day and learnt by doing. And by the end of the 100 days, I've kind of gotten a pretty good handle on the basics. So it was something that worked really well for me. And while I was doing this, it would pop up in conversation with friends. And because I do know quite a few DJs, one of my friends, Matt Drake, invited me to play one of his gigs. And, that's a great opportunity when you get it. So I wasn't going to say no to that. And that was really what kicked it off, which was amazing, because I hadn't actually thought as far ahead as actually playing in front of people. I was originally just doing it because I was interested in, what that would feel like to do.
Wow, that's a very incredible journey, and I'm really glad that I asked because it get open a whole story of you that it just extend to the one that I'm used to experience, you behind the deck and me on the dance floor. So it's really nice to know what's behind all of this. And I really, I particularly like the aspect of, as I was hearing you talking about your journey almost with no expectation, because you were not thinking of actually arriving to a point where you were thinking to perform, but actually experiencing the journey just to go through something that you were so committed to, and also with the push of having a certain amount of day to achieve something that you wanted to, and keeping it simple with a commitment that was not overloading you over time. Uh, Maybe also because there was not that expectation at the end of what you were going to do with these skills. It sounds to me like
Mm.
was like a process just to enjoying and experiencing something new.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to that, like because it was a really charmed entry, to start learning DJing myself and then all of a sudden be invited to play, these amazing gigs at the clubs where, in Auckland we really go and listen to this kind of music. And I don't think that if I'd been if I had that kind of intention in mind, I don't think it would have been as easy to kind of make it happen. I think a big part of what's unfolded has been because it's just always been driven, by the music, and so everything that's come out of that has happened pretty organically, and it hasn't been trying to engineer everything. So I think that's definitely something that's that's helped and been a factor along the way for sure.
Yeah, sounds like a more organic experience than forcing yourself to achieve something. But I wonder if you have any specific thoughts related to your ability at that time to commit to yourself, knowing that you had 100 day. How was for you to experience something that you wanted to commit to, with no specific outcome in terms of like big dreams, but even the hypothesis of 100 days are quite a long time, and sometimes it's hard to commit to something for 7 days, which is just a week. So I
Yeah.
wonder how was for you that process of exploration, if you find like the necessity to commit to it, or you give yourself like permission to maybe not be doing this step day by day, but maybe jumping a little bit in between. Like, how was for you this experience of committing and eventually giving yourself space also to take a break from the commitment?
Yeah. I think, I love the concept of the 100-day project so much. And when I've talked about it to people, I've said, look, it really needs to be something that you care about enough to, show up for 100 days in a row, because it's, it's long enough to feel like work is the way that Emma described it. And I think she's right. And I think one of the keys to being able to do it was to keep it really bite-sized. So, if it's a busy day and you get to the end of it and it's like, oh, I still haven't done the thing, you can mix two songs in about 15 minutes of everything set up. So it's not a huge time commitment. And then if you have other days that are more open and you've got more time, you can just sit down and you can play for however long you wanted. So some days it was like oh, I'm just doing it because I said a word, but I want to go to bed, so I'm going to do it as quickly as I can. Some days were like that, and other days were, oh, I've got half an hour, let's just see how it goes, kind of thing. Um, and one of the things, so at the end of this project, they had an exhibition where everybody could, present their projects that they'd been working on. And I said, wow, I can't really exhibit my project, but I could play at the opening of the exhibition. And they got us to answer all of these questions so that they could put these little cards and have them next to people's work. And one of the questions that they asked was, how many days out of 100 did you do? And I kept track of it. And I think I got to about 85. So, there were some days where it just didn't happen. But I was like, well, if that was a test at school, that would still be an A. It's not that bad. And then we got to the exhibition and I was walking around and looking at everybody's cards and everybody was like 100 out of 100. And I was like, oh, I'm just, I just wasn't as committed as these people. But then I looked at mine and mine also said 100 out of 100. So they just gave everybody blanket hundreds for doing the project. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So
That's
yeah,
so
I guess, it can be good to have something to aim for. And then if you do 85% of it, that's still pretty good. I think it is important to, recognize that not every day you're going to have something to give and to not beat yourself up too long and hard about it.
Yeah, that is so interesting, and I really want to acknowledge that this, of course, for your journey was about committing to music and your ability to explore what a DJ feels like to perform and having the pleasure of mixing songs. But this it can apply to anything in our life that someone might be inspired from your story to do as well. But about your story in particular, my next question was related to your first experience. And from here, you can decide to describe the first one that you talk about or your actual first gig in terms of the feelings arising when you need to step out fully out of your comfort zone and how that works out for you in terms of if you recall anything in particular that could have that supported you in trying and give it a go without too much pressure on yourself.
Yeah. So I guess the gig that I kind of think of as my first proper gig was the party for Matt, which was at Ink Bar. So, that felt like a big deal to be going to kind of the main club that we were going to listen to gigs. And I felt really surprised and really flattered that he asked me because, being such a beginner. Um, and I prepared a lot. I think preparation is important in terms of feeling like, you're ready to step up and do these kind of things. But even then, as much as I had prepared, I definitely had, probably some of the worst nerves I've ever had. Like I walked into the venue feeling like I was going to die. Um, and yeah, I mean, by that point, there's just kind of no turning back. So you've just got to do it. And sometimes I say that, like when you are doing a DJ act, it's a little bit like flying. Taking off is one of the most dangerous parts. So it's a bit the same with DJing. Like your first track in. Although if you're the first one playing, not so much. But if you're mixing in over somebody else, that's kind of one of those stressful times. And once you get that in, I find that it's fine and I can kind of settle into it. But yeah, sometimes nerves still pop up and I'm still working my way around learning how to deal with that. And yeah, it kind of comes back to some basic things like breathing techniques, try and calm the nervous system through, calming breath techniques. Um, yeah, I think it's one of those things that as a DJ, I feel like most DJs on a regular basis are having to deal with their nerves. I don't know that many that don't have it to some extent.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And wow, Ink Bar. Ink Bar is still one of the main club in Auckland and such a opportunity for you to start like that, like
Yeah,
to
it
jump
really
straight away
was.
into the biggest scene that you could be in, and still being out there after all this time. Sometimes it happens that you try it out, it seems too big, and then you give it up because you couldn't handle your nerves. And it's nice that
Yeah.
um, you're still growing through the sense of discomfort, but it doesn't stop you to explore, experience, have fun, and share what you like. So it's beautiful that this is still happening and still there is the same sensation, even if maybe less, than the is still arising despite all this time and this experience from your first gig to this point.
Yeah, well, because what happened at that first gig? I mean, I initially I thought that there probably wouldn't be very many people, because there's not often a lot of people for that warm-up slot. People usually come a bit later. But of course, I had lots of friends that came along to support me. So there was a dance floor early, and it went, better than I could have hoped. I was really just hoping to get through it alive without, embarrassing myself. And it just went so much better than I expected. And so I got that first taste of, the thrill of you playing music for people and them enjoying it and just the experience that creates. So, yeah, once you do experience that, it does tend to keep you coming back for it.
Absolutely. And I really enjoy all the time that I came to experience your music, the way that it makes me feel internally. And I assume just by also your preparation that you were mentioning earlier, um, it's something that needs to be liked by you first before to sharing it. And I can
Yeah.
definitely experience that while I'm there.
Yeah, no, that's really important for me. I think sometimes, it can be it can be easy to get into your head and think a little bit too much about what you think people might want to hear or be expecting to hear. And I've found that if I think about that too much, then it doesn't flow as well for me. So now my approach is really, I do put it through that lens of, do I want to hear this? Is this something that I would want to hear at this time of the night? Um, and let that kind of be the thing that will help me choose what songs that I'm playing. And then that means that, I'm excited about what I'm sharing. And so that feeds into it as well. So yeah, that is something that's really important to me. And I've been lucky that, through the nature of the gigs that I've done, and the fact that, like it's not, I'm not trying to make it my main form of income, which gives me a lot more choice in terms of, the gigs that I do choose to do. It's been really nice to have that freedom and to be able to be able to take that approach all the way through without having to, meet other people's expectations or a venue's expectations about playing a certain thing. Yeah, it's liberating, and I think it's definitely helped as well.
That's such a nice way to once again release expectation by creating our own boundary compared to what we wish to share, especially if it's something that we like, and sometimes giving it that value of committing as a main job, or um, something that can give us the only income or most of our income, can create some tension between what our heart wants and what our mind wants. So definitely something precious for us to decide in which extent do we wish to celebrate whatever passion we have and interest to share with the world. Mm.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. There are different factors with any kind of artistic outlet, right? When you try and make it a significant source of your income, inevitably there's different things that you have to do. So yeah, that's one of the things that has been quite nice for me, that I've just been able to keep it this kind of, small but significant passion that I can do from time to time.
And I guess that what comes to me next in terms of DJing is the fact that women are still like a minority from what I can see out there in terms of DJing. So I wonder how it is for you to be part of a raising community of women that might start to explore the realm of music and DJing possibly as well? How does it feel to be still like the um, I don't want to say the first generation because there has been people before us doing this, but still being rising and being part of that community that we are growing as women DJing as well.
Yeah. No, I think it's an interesting time for the music community, as the importance of diversity and inclusivity, it's become such a topic just generally in society and something that we know we have to get better at. I think, the same definitely applies in the music world. And uh yeah, I think there's some challenges in terms of, getting women and other groups of people as well into music in the first place. So I think in order to grow the number of women in electronic music, then we need to think about how do we introduce people to that experience. And there's some good things coming up. There's some, every now and then some courses pop up that give people the opportunity to play on the equipment and get that kind of introduction into what it is. And it's going to take, a lot more of that, and breaking down those barriers to entry, because I think there is a certain amount of awareness in terms of people throwing gigs. There is this expectation that we want to see women on the lineup, and there can be promoters that get a lot of pressure if they don't do that. um, and at the moment the challenge is that pool is relatively small, so it's that creative challenge of how do we grow the pool. So I always try and any women that I talk to that express an interest in it, I invite them to come over and have a look if they want to, and give it a go. Because the nice thing is with technology these days is that, for just a few $100s, you can get yourself a setup that is all that you need to learn on, and that can serve as a stepping stone to getting into the scene and building the skills to be able to step into those events.
Thank you for your reflection on that. And I wanted to ask you a question based on the fact that in your experience, you've been quite lucky because you were surrounded by a group of friends who were DJing, and you felt their support in growing in that. Although you never thought initially to make it part of um, your passion and your professional experience also in that realm. But I wonder if you could give an additional suggestion, although everything that you share up to now is to me very inspiring. But if you could give a suggestion to someone that, especially in the women community, that might not feel ready yet to take that step because might have still some restriction in the way that this person might perceive herself out there, what would you recommend or suggest to to let it out and supporting this seed to blossom into a
Mm,
beautiful
yeah.
DJ?
So it sounds like you're thinking specifically about the skill of DJing itself there, and kind of building up that experience to then be able to play. Is that what you're meaning?
Yes, that because anyway, as your journey sounded to me, is not just an interesting of becoming a DJ. Is also about learning a skill that then
Mm,
might lead you there. But I wonder if there is someone that already might have dream of becoming a DJ, so already maybe considering the fact that my then you can take it the way you want. I was imagining someone whom I already play and not being ready to come out of their shell because
yeah.
maybe they are women and they don't feel supported in their community as it happens in your case, which it comes naturally, the support because
Yeah.
they were connection that allowed this to be possible. But feel free
Yeah.
to explore this question in whatever way resonates with
Yeah,
you.
sure. I mean, so I think in terms of, building up the confidence in terms of the playing side itself, um, if it's something that people really want to do, I'd really recommend finding the money to buy like a little controller. And there are some, there's some entry level controllers that still have basically all of the functions that you would find on a professional setup in a club, just in a smaller version. You can get them for about, I don't know, $600 new. You get it cheaper secondhand. And apart from that, you just need a pair of headphones and the speaker. Um, so I think getting some kind of basic setup to learn on is the best way to do it, because it can be hard to get access on the equipment otherwise. And then it's a matter of practicing. There's just no replacement for learning by doing, so putting the time in. And then there's a few different ways that you can actually get the guidance on the technique side of things, right? There's so much stuff on YouTube. So you could just look on YouTube for tutorials and you would be able to find any number of things. There's also some, more structured online courses that you can get. And then I think that aspect of getting used to playing in front of people is the other big thing to overcome, right? So I'd be suggesting starting off with something with, where the stakes are a little lower. So play every house party you can, and build up some confidence that way. And then I think once you start to have that kind of base level of knowing what you're doing and being comfortable to do it, then that's time to kind of outreach and find your community, right? And if music's something that you're interested in, then you're probably going to gigs, and so you probably are getting to know some of those people in the community. And I'd be introducing myself to the promoters that are putting on those nights that you like, so that they get to know you. And they will notice if you support their events, and you turn up to the things that they do. They will notice that. And then you can share mixes and really just start to reach out. I was lucky that I was invited. I didn't have to go out and try and get those things. But if it was something that I wanted, then yeah, that's the approach that I would have done. Share mixtapes. There are also things that pop up from time to time. Open decks nights. I know Il Bruto in Auckland does them on a fairly regular basis. So that can be a really great opportunity just to actually have that experience of playing in a club environment on the full setup, on a big sound system, and just start to build experience that way.
Thank you, Tina. I really love like the actual structure of supporting someone who is interested. Sometimes it happens that when that is asked, and not in this particular context, but it's quite vague. And I really like the clear step by step of how we can be out there if that is our wish and desire of stepping into this path, getting to know people, and then one things lead to another at the end, and there will be opportunity even just by being out there and sharing who you are. So if you're listening and you are interested, this to me is like a really nice guidelines of how to get out of our comfort zone. Sometimes it takes also that. So keeping ourselves accountable for reaching our dreams and see if they could be possible by exploring those different paths that we can get into, especially in Auckland.
Yeah, yeah. And just the importance of kind of, building it up over time so that you're not taking a step that feels too scary and that, you don't want to do it. Um, that was something that I really appreciated about the training that I went through to teach the Les Mills class. They structured that so well. So, the first time you go on a stage in front of a full room doing the class, you're paired up with another teacher. So you don't even have to say anything. All you have to do is be on stage doing the class. And then the next time, maybe you'll teach one track and you'll just gradually build it up so that every time is a stretch, but it's a manageable stretch. And then after a period of time, you're doing a class on your own. And I thought it's such a clever way to do it so that you're not overwhelming yourself and putting yourself through, too much stress, because that can be when you're just like, oh, just don't want to, I'm just not going to do it, if the leap is too great. So small incremental progress is good.
Thank you, Tina. I wanted to ask you if up in this point of our conversation, there is anything else that if it feels that is valuable to share, although we cover quite some things together. And while I let you
Yeah.
think, another thing that I wanted to mention is that for those who are anyway interested to know also where Tina will play next, to reach out to the link that I share below this episode. So that could be a possibility also to get to know her in person, share her music, dance together on the dance floor, and maybe reach out to her in person if someone is curious to get to know Tina.
Yeah, and if anybody does want to talk about, stepping into the DJing world, I'm always really happy to have that conversation. Yeah, and Instagram's probably the best place to find me there. That's where I tend to do most of the promoting of the events that are coming up.
Do you think that there is anything else that you wish to share before I ask you one last question?
Not that comes to mind. I think we covered a lot of ground. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I ask because sometimes we might forgot something that feels important. So it's nice that I can give the space since I have this in mind and see if there is something. Sometimes I know that the last question is the one that opens other doors. So let's see how it goes this time. But my last question is based on the sharing that we do with our practice of art yoga, although I revisit it through the idea of this podcast in order to be appreciated also from the point of view of our listeners and feel that they are included in this sharing. And the invitation is if you like to share three empowering messages that you would like to um, share with us, including, if you like, yourself, myself, and everybody else who is listening in this moment.
Oh, okay. Um, the first one that came to mind is really around that process of, learning a new skill, because it was a message that I came across at just the right time, which is that there is this uncomfortable period where you're drawn to doing something because you have good taste and you know what you like. And then there's a period of time where you don't have the skill to be able to deliver to the level that you want and that is where your standards are. And it's just helpful, I think, to be really aware of that and to know that's completely normal. And the only way out the other side is through the doing of the thing, and the practicing and the putting the time in and learning the skills and learning by doing. So yeah, I would just encourage anybody that's trying something new to be willing to do it badly for a while, and just not be too hard on yourself while that's happening. What else could I offer? There's this concept of enoughness that I quite like, which I guess it's useful just in the sense that our energy levels fluctuate, different things can be going on in our life, and uh, what our best on any given day might look quite different depending on what's going on. So sometimes if I've got a lot going on and I've got all these things that I need to do, I think about, okay, what would be enough for today to be happy with? And it might not be as many things on my list that I'd planned on doing for the day, but if I can get through, the three most important ones, then I can sometimes say, okay, that if I do those, that will be enough for today. And then tomorrow is another day and can come and come back to the list and do the other things. What else? What else? Um, yeah, I think if we are talking about, a creative outlet that we're pursuing, I think anything that we can do to tap back into that, the central pleasure that it gives us. So doing something just for the fact that you love it. I think anything you can do to get back to that place is really helpful for your practice. And so maybe that means just doing something for the fun of it that won't ever see the light of day. But yeah, giving ourselves freedom to kind of play a bit more and pursue that pleasure.
Thank you. This is my favorite part of the conversation because it's the one where I'm taking in everything that is shared, firstly, and hoping that everybody else as well get inspired by those messages. And I really like the simplicity yet the powerful content that you share with us today, not just like in terms of this last part, but also through your life experience and where your journey led you to your personal passion. So thank you, Tina, for that.
Oh, thank you. It's been a lovely conversation.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time that you offered us today. And I'm really hoping that for everybody else who is listening in this moment, you might take on board as many insight that you feel that they are connected with you today. And I'm hoping that you have a great, great day. Thank you.
Grazie per averci fatto compagnia. We hope you enjoyed your time with us. If you wish to stay updated and connected, visit us on our social media channels and our website www.artyoga.co. Ci sentiamo presto. Ciao!